Hey, so I watched Superman the day it came out, and I just watched Fantastic Four, so I'm gonna give you a quick review of both of them right now. Also, I will be mentioning a couple spoilers, so just pay attention. Your screen will flash red when I'm about to say or show a spoiler, and green when it's all clear. Let's get into it. To start things off, we have Superman. There really was a lot to like about this movie. In many aspects, it definitely did feel like a super long episode of a Superman TV show. The structure of the story wasn't exactly what I expected it to be, but everything still flowed really well, and it didn't seem out of place that the movie just starts in the middle of everything, with very little introduction to the world or most of the characters. I feel like we're all familiar, or at least we should be, with the DC universe and its many characters to the point where there isn't really much need to do introduction or backstory. Even some of the lesser known characters that showed up in the movie didn't once feel like they were out of place or needed much introduction. Speaking of the characters, they were all definitely very well cast. All of the main actors did a really good job of playing their characters. Nicholas Hoult in particular, he was absolutely perfect as Lex. He was very believably able to portray that mix of pettiness, intelligence, and superiority that just comes standard with Lex Luthor, casually showing off his intelligence by easily making and utilizing wormholes and pocket universes, able to make a nearly perfect clone of Superman in a way almost proving his superiority, and not only being so petty with his hate for Superman that he murders a dude just for being nice and helping Superman a little, but also manipulating two entire countries and starting a war just to have an excuse to kill Superman. If that's not Lex Luthor, I don't know what is. The Justice Gang was also pretty great. Before the movie came out, people were worried that so many characters might make the movie overstuffed, but that wasn't the case at all. The inclusion of the Justice Gang felt very natural in the movie, and all of its members played their parts in the story well without making it feel overcrowded. Their inclusion also made the world of the story feel bigger. Instead of just focusing on characters directly related to Superman, the movie brings in characters from the greater DC universe, in turn making the story feel like it's part of a larger world instead of its own little bubble. The effects were absolutely great. Though there were a handful of moments where things looked a little bit odd or out of place, the majority of the special effects were very, very good. Metamorpho's mix of practical effects and CGI were especially great, but more on that later. Some other standout scenes with great visual effects are definitely the black hole scene with the Proton River, the scene with the kaiju monster, and basically every single scene with Krypto in it. They did a really great job of making him look real. Moving on, the fight scenes were really great. They were dynamic, interesting, creative, engaging. There wasn't a single one where I can say I was the least bit bored, unlike some other DC movies I know. Lastly, I really liked the inclusion of several moments in the movie that were largely unnecessary, but were really just there to be funny or cool for cool's sake. For example, this scene with the engineer, like, why did you do that? Was it cool? Yeah, it was cool, but why? And for a quick couple things I didn't like, there were a couple small moments of dialogue that felt a little off or out of place, like Mr. Terrific saying,
"I'm goddamn Mr. Terrific."
Also, Hawkgirl just murdering the Baravian president was kind of out of left field for me. Like, I know they established that the Justice Gang aren't exactly against being a bit more brutal with their tactics, but that part in particular just felt a little jarring, especially since there didn't seem to be any consequences for it. Maybe it'll be mentioned in something later, but for now, I wasn't that fond of it. Also, the fact that Clark's parents did send him to Earth with the intention to have him conquer and rule over it is something I didn't really like. And yes, I do understand that this choice was to emphasize that Clark is who he is because of his choices, and he's a good person because he wants to be, but I don't know. I don't have a huge problem with it, but it still just doesn't really sit right with me, you know? And last but not least, I feel like Ultraman was a tiny bit underutilized. His inclusion, I felt like, carried way less weight than it should have. He was a bit more of a tool than a character, which isn't in and of itself a problem. I just feel like it should have been a bit more significant that he's a clone of Clark, and it was kind of just glossed over a little. And then he died, assumably. I mean, if they're planning on him being Bizarro later, why not at least tease that? And if they're not planning on him being Bizarro later, why not? I just feel like he could have been a little bit more of a focus in the movie. With all that being said, is Superman an absolutely perfect movie? No. Is it still very good? Yes. This movie does what it set out to do very well. It represents Superman as a person with troubles, insecurities, and problems that any person may have, all the while making it very clear how important and inspiring Superman is as a symbol of hope and what both a hero and a human could and should be. Superman is an amazing jumping off point for the new DCU, and if this movie is in any way indication of what we're in store for down the line, get ready for some peak. I give Superman a solid 8.5 out of 10. It's closer to a 6 than a 4. I did not do that reference right. Anyway, overall I'd say this movie's pretty Superman.
Say that again?
With that seamless transition, let's get right into talking about Fantastic Four First Steps. In a word, shit was fantastic.
Say that again?
In all seriousness, I was pleasantly surprised with how good this movie turned out to be. Just like with Superman, we are kind of thrust into everything right in the middle, but we are given a lot more introduction. And the introduction doesn't feel clunky or out of place at all because it's incorporated in the form of an in-universe TV special. All of the actors played their characters very well, but personally, I feel like Vanessa Kirby and Joseph Quinn were the best here. I think their performances probably stood out the most out of everyone, but if not them, I'd probably say the same thing about Julia Garner if Silver Surfer showed up in the movie more. Moving on, the effects. The effects are absolutely fucking great. Can't recall any significant amount of scenes where any of the CGI looked janky or weird. All of the Fantastic Four's powers work and look exactly how they should, and they're really fun to watch. Especially since the movie has them just casually using their powers for everyday stuff, it just made it all feel really natural. And continuing what I was initially saying earlier about Metamorpho, the mix of practical effects and CGI used for both The Thing and Galactus are absolutely great. But not only is this style of special effects use great, it should be the standard. Blending practical effects and CGI is usually always good because each effect makes up for the shortcomings of the other. If the practical effects look too wooden or awkward, CGI smooths that shit out. And if CGI looks too unnatural and out of place, the practical effects help ground it. I really hope that with the success of Superman and the hopeful success of Fantastic Four, everybody will realize that this is the way to go. Anyway, a couple of standout scenes where a lot of great visual effects are used include the meeting with Galactus, the black hole scene, and of course the final fight. And speaking of fight scenes, the action in this movie is, unsurprisingly, also very good. Just like with Superman, all of the action was very engaging and interesting, and massive shout out to Silver Surfer. In basically every scene she was in, she was an absolute menace. Lastly, the vast majority of the dialogue was really snappy and had a nice flow to it. It really felt like these characters knew each other, even though we didn't get much of a deeper look into some of them. Alright, now for the couple of things that I didn't like much. The movie has one or two plot threads that kind of don't go anywhere, or at least feel like they don't. Like with Ben and that woman he met near the beginning of the movie. It kinda seems like they're gonna get together or have some sort of relationship, but they only meet up like one time after that, and I don't think we see her again. Also, Silver Surfer's storyline with Johnny left me kind of wanting. Johnny was spending most of the movie trying to crack her language and communicate with her better, and when he finally did and showed her the recordings from Zenla, she kinda just left. Yes, it did make sense why, and she did come back right at the very end to help them stop Galactus, but it still felt like something was missing. I just feel like the movie probably could have benefited from her being in the story a bit more. There were a couple moments of weird or out of place looking CGI, but that mostly happened with Baby Franklin. And lastly, I definitely would not have picked Joseph Quinn and Pedro Pascal to play Reed and Johnny, but they did a pretty good job anyway. I just don't think either of them really has the right look for the characters they played. And that's it. For my closing thoughts, I'd like to say this movie was not perfect, but still very enjoyable. All the props, set design, and even the music gave the whole movie a really interesting and unique vibe that I've never seen anywhere else. It made the whole thing feel like it was ripped straight out of an old comic book. As they make very clear across the entire movie, Fantastic Four First Steps is all about family, and I think they get that message across really well. Though it's not the start of a whole new universe like Superman is, it does feel like a really good turning point for the MCU. With that being said, I think it's fair to give Fantastic Four First Steps a solid 8.5 out of 10. I know, I gave Superman the exact same rating. There's a reason though, cause in all honesty, I don't really fuck with the Fantastic Four like that. I don't think I've read a Fantastic Four comic in my life. All of my experience with them is from shows, movies, or other comics where they've appeared but haven't been the center. Because I'm not that familiar with the Fantastic Four and can only view this movie through the lens of somebody who isn't familiar with them, I feel like an 8.5 is the most fair rating I can give. At least until I read up on them more, which I will definitely do probably sometime maybe later, I don't know. Anyway, that's gonna be all for now. If you liked the video, let me know, and maybe consider fiddling with that button down there. If you made it this far, thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.